I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, and this is a breaking news alert. Over the weekend, Donald Trump took to his social media platform and wrote a number of horrific and horrible things. I'm going to cover one of them now, and we will do another hit on some of the other statements that he's made, because it's just been a stream of consciousness, of hate, of lies, of dangerous disinformation. But it is vital that we call it out and we condemn it. And this post that he made relates to the search warrant executed at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump has been spreading a massive amount of disinformation about the National Archives, about the Presidential Records Act, about our nuclear secrets, which causes the highest degree of alarm. And let's just pull up this post right now. And in this post, Donald Trump says NARA, the National Archives, has, quote, lost massive amounts of information from past presidents, including classified and nuclear secrets all over the place, and they don't care. They only care about going after, quote, Trump, even though we've done everything right as per the Presidential Records Act and the Clinton Sox case. Again, so much disinformation here. Literally every single word is a lie. I want to focus on perhaps the most dangerous statement that he's made here, where he says, including classified and nuclear secrets all over the place. Lying that the National Archives and our government has simply lost and distributed our highest guarded secrets, our nuclear secrets, all over the place. Completely false. And this harkens back to reporting that we've had here on the MeidasTouch Network, and it's been reported elsewhere, that some of the records that were obtained during the August 8th search warrant executed at Mar-a-Lago, we already know those 100 classified records are the highest level of top secret classified compartmented information. But there was other reporting here and elsewhere that they also involved nuclear secrets. And recently, at one of those fascist rallies that Donald Trump held, he had accused the Department of Justice of potentially planting nuclear secrets at Mar-a-Lago. And here in the statement, his focus on nuclear secrets all over the place. We know with Donald Trump's projection, what this undoubtedly means is that he was holding nuclear secrets all over the place at Mar-a-Lago, and likely to this day still has records at Bedminster and Trump Tower and elsewhere, and potentially photocopies of it. Let's just go through some of these other statements. I mean, I've done everything right per the Presidential Records Act. You've literally done everything wrong per the Presidential Records Act. And by the way, if you think you did everything right per the Presidential Records Act, the Presidential Records Act has a provision that any disputes related to the Presidential Records Act must be filed in the District Court of the District of Columbia. So you even filed in the wrong court so you could get your stooge judge, Eileen Cannon, who doesn't know what the hell she's doing, and she's very quickly about to be overturned again by the 11th Circuit with the expedited briefing by the Department of Justice. But you literally did not do everything pursuant to the Presidential Records Act. In fact, you did everything the opposite of the Presidential Records Act. The Presidential Records Act doesn't allow a former president to steal government records and hide them in their weird resort home, period. To the extent there are disputes over potential personal records, presidential records, you can't steal government records. The Presidential Records Act has a provision which basically says, to the extent you dispute any of the classifications, the documents are first with the archives. You don't steal them, go around the Presidential Records Act, force the National Archives to go discover it through a Department of Justice investigation and a grand jury subpoena that you then have lawyers submit false declarations under penalty of perjury, cause them to have to execute a search warrant and find that you were indeed engaged in obstruction of justice. Okay, that is the exact opposite, the most egregious violations of the Presidential Records Act. But again, to the extent you believe the Presidential Records Act was even at play, the Presidential Records Act says any disputes over documents that once the National Archives has, if you're somehow claiming, oh, I got a personal document mixed up in what you're claiming to be the government records, that dispute goes through a district court proceeding in Washington, D.C. One of the things Trump is also obsessed with is this Clinton Sox case. But, Trump always spreads this information. The Clinton Sox case that he references, that person Fintan, you've heard that name, Fintan, it runs that organization, Judicial Watch. Fintan is not a lawyer. We learned recently at the January 6th committee as well that Fintan was intimately involved in some of the plans related to the January 6th insurrection. Well, Fintan brought this lawsuit against the National Archives and against Bill Clinton like 10 years ago. So like 20 years after Clinton left the office, or like 30 years after Clinton left the office, Fintan filed this frivolous lawsuit, this civil lawsuit against the National Archives, and the court dismissed it. And the case involved President Clinton's autobiography and whether Bill Clinton's notes that were related to his autobiography that he kept in a drawer was whether that was a violation of the Presidential Records Act. That's what Fintan sued. The court dismissed the lawsuit, one, because it was filed 25 or 30 years late. Also, that has nothing to do with classified records. I mean, there are very, very, very small exceptions where if a president is, for example, writing an autobiography, or if a president is engaged in personal types of stuff, you could designate it as personal. But this Fintan lawsuit, the case was basically dismissed as being frivolous. It has nothing to do with stealing top secret classified records and nuclear secrets or stealing government records at all. The case is completely different. It wasn't even a criminal case. And here, the conduct at issue, again, let's not forget, Donald Trump stole tens of thousands of classified records and hundreds of records that we know of that have the highest level of classification within our government. Top secret, classified, compartmented information that have to be viewed in SCIFs, which are these special locations for these classified records to even be reviewed. And he kept them, he hid them, he lied to the government when the government requested these documents back. And then when he lied to them when the government issued a grand jury subpoena. So complete lies. And then he goes, NARA has lost massive amounts of information from past presidents, including classified and nuclear secrets all over the place, and they don't care. They only care about going after Trump. Now, one of the things that he attaches, because I guess he hopes that people don't even read the things that he's posting and just either read the headline. And that's why it's very dangerous what the media does sometimes when they don't delve and dig into the issues. Because if you actually even read this article that he posts to, which is like a law review article or just an academic piece about, and this was written many, many, many years ago, about how the National Archives can do a better job cataloging their records. It talks nothing about losing nuclear secrets, number one, but it also talks about potential violations of the Espionage Act and says that no one here, regarding the situation that was being talked about in the article, were actually engaged in espionage, and that an Espionage Act crimes need to be prosecuted and are incredibly serious, and talked about how the National Archives should, and this was written many, many, many years ago, needs to do a better job making sure it reaches out to presidents and reaches out to former presidents to do a better job cataloging, which it took the recommendations and did, especially with the Obama administration, with George W. Bush, with Trump, and Trump just stole the records and stole our top secret classified information. So again, all lies, all disinformation, but going back to this idea of nuclear secrets all over the place raises another red flag right here that Donald Trump likely has nuclear secrets all over the place at Mar-a-Lago and probably still has that today. That's the type of projection we see from him. And again, this post that was done on his social media company, it's after he wrote that dangerous and deranged manifesto on Friday to Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th committee after Trump was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee during the Thursday hearing, and he called them the unselects and talked about hoax and talked about Antifa and BLM. It was the rantings and ravings of a lunatic. But as we've covered here on the MeidasTouch Network, that letter that Trump wrote to Benny Thompson also goes to Trump's intent regarding all of Donald Trump's criminality in connection with election interference of 2020. It would further go to buttress the January 6th arguments that Donald Trump has waived any potential claim of executive privilege in an interbranch governmental disputes. Of course, a former president can't assert executive privilege with the current executive. There are some small exceptions where a past executive could potentially claim executive privilege regarding an interbranch dispute, in this case one between a former executive and the Congress, co-equal branches. But where there is a crime fraud in place, the crime fraud exception, or where there is a public disclosure by a former executive of certain facts, you can't claim any confidential executive privilege, which is supposed to protect confidential, deliberative communications by presidents, by executives engaged in actually following the law. And when you talk about things publicly, it waives and vitiates any claim, because what the January 6th committee will simply say is, we want to ask you questions about things that you've already publicly said. We want to ask you questions about the letter, what you've said at these fascist rallies and at other places. Donald Trump just continues to build the evidence against himself. This is a dangerous and deranged individual who needs to be prosecuted soon. But as you know, by following the MeidasTouch Network, I do have confidence in the Department of Justice. I have confidence in Merrick Garland. And if you want to know just where my confidence comes from, just look at what took place during the search warrant executed at Mar-a-Lago and where we are today. Donald Trump is playing checkers, and not only was Merrick Garland playing chess, but he was 20 to 30 moves ahead at all times, knowing all the obstruction that Donald Trump was going to do, including having contingencies for Donald Trump finding a Trump-appointed stooge judge like Judge Eileen Cannon, who could make corrupt rulings, and how the Department of Justice would surgically first get their classified records back, then move for an expedited appeal, which is now before the 11th Circuit, and basically checkmate Trump and the corrupt judge. We'll keep you posted here on the MeidasTouch Network as more information develops. Another post that he made as well, we're going to cover here as well, an incredibly disturbing post. He's just on a spiraling rant of dangerous posts. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hey, hit the subscribe button right now. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers with your support. Also, if you want to support us on Patreon, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. No matter where you are in the world, become a member of Patreon. Exclusive membership packages, behind the scenes footage. You could become an honorary producer of our podcast and more, but most importantly, help grow this independent media channel. We have no outside investors, and it's a good way to help grow this channel. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.